Item 11 shouldn't take that much discussion.
I'm talking about 10.
10.
Oh,
Yeah, we saw it at number 10, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, this is the G&A, which is related but different.
oh, I thought we addressed that.
And Cindy, just if I may, this is basically a cost accounting function where you're saying there are some indirect costs involved in operating the electric. There's also some direct costs involved, and you're essentially prorating those costs back to the electric company through the general fund. Your human resources may be done on the number of employees, and whatever the cost of that is, it's divided equally amongst all the employees, and however many are in the electric gets put that much, that amount of proration goes to the electrical.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Correct.
And any of the other external services.
Yep. Risk management and the attorney and the staffing for the clerk's office as Sherry sits there right now and that sort of thing. Yes, absolutely.
Right, and then any direct expense that might be going through for salaries or something would be applied directly to that. It wouldn't be an indirect cost. It would be a direct cost of operation.
It is.
Okay.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark Mucher, 617 Indian Lilac Road. Cindy, you didn't put a number on this one. I think it was like 1.7 million or something like that.
It is down, I think, in the last year to about $1.5 million or so, because as costs fall in the general fund, the percentages fall. But it's right around there.
Last time we looked at it, I think it's at about 1.7 million. And when we first started talking about the sale, Jim did, perhaps with your help, did some calculations on how much we would save if we didn't have a utility. And I recall that number to be 550,000, or about a third. In other words, we're charging 3 times what we would save. So does that question bring into question your cost accounting? Of course, I've had a lot of cost accounting, and I believe it's much more of a magic than science. But
I'd be happy to show my cost allocation to you, and certainly in places where there's an objective factor I can hang it on, audited cash receipts, et cetera, I do. The point I think back to those numbers that we talked about is that even though, for instance, we legitimately allocate a portion of, I'll use the perfect example, City Council's time to the electric utility, probably too little at this point given the amount of their time they actually spend on it. Once we sell the electric utility, we're not going to be able to reduce ourselves from 5 City Council members to 3 just because we're minus the electric utility. So the reason those numbers aren't one-to-one is because there are certain fixed costs that, although they are legitimately allocated, even if we don't have an electric utility, we still have those costs. The other thing is that we've actually made some of those reductions since then. Before the sale, I mean, we've gone down in like warehouse and purchasing and some of those things, so the amount that's getting allocated back out has gotten smaller. The budget allocation for 13-14 is down from, you remember correctly, in 11-12 it was $1.7 million. It's down to $1.589 million. As costs have fallen in the general fund, less is flowing out to the and that's not all the electric utility. That's electric that is the electric utility portion. There's water, sewers, solid waste, et cetera, as well. So.
Would it be fair then to say that it's a matter of a fully allocated cost allocation as opposed to perhaps what I was thinking of was a marginal cost of having electric utility?
It is, and again, it's department by department. It's different. For council or the clerk, et cetera, there's no metric for me to hang it on, so it's purely an estimate that we review periodically. For things like IT, it's number of workstations per department per fund, and that's how IT gets allocated on the computer support side. So, for instance, for them, when all those computers go away, if we're not able to reduce staffing because there's only 2 people left in that department, then everyone else's costs will go up a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it's department by department. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess what what I was thinking was maybe we'd have some number might be fairer between the marginal cost and the fully allocated cost. Because I was kind of shocked when we're given the electric utility is given the general fund $1.5 or $1.7 million, but if we didn't have an electric fund or didn't have an electric utility, we'd only save $500,000 or $600,000. But I see.
Yeah.
Just
Things like this building. I mean, this building supports the support staff, and portions of the costs of running this building get allocated out to the other funds because the support staff that they pay for is here. But again, if they go away, we won't be able to get rid of this building. So there's a number of departments where there's just a fixed cost that, again, I think is legitimately allocated, but that we can't get rid of, in whole.
But then somebody, as you said, somebody else will have to pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
Except for the pure marginal costs.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
All right, thank you.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that we'll be able to change this because we've already agreed to move forward on the 6%, and I think that the way Cindy is doing her cost accounting, I mean, it's always subject to, well, you could do it this way or you could do it that way. You could reallocate purchasing costs based on total dollars in each budget or the total number of purchases that are made. And I think that what they've done is certainly consistent with all my experience in governmental cost accounting. So I don't really see how we can change any of this, having agreed to go with the 6% early on.
The suggestion, what I intended, was not to lower it, but with the processes they're using in allocations, would in fact that lower it, plus a lower budget and so forth, not just go in and say cut it 10%. So that was the intention. Perhaps it was misleading. So can I have a motion?
I think it would be based on the criteria you're using to allocate to them. But obviously they're using your services that they would have had to pay for somewhere else. So they'd just be paying their fair share, and that would depend on, what the methodology was of allocating it, what formula you were using, but it would seem appropriate that they pay it.
And I will tell you, when I first came on board a few years back, there were a number of them that were, in other words, the vast majority of them were purely on an estimated percentage. And so I took as many of them as I could, and I tied them to very specific numbers like percentage of employees, percentage of total workstations, audited cash transactions for cashiers, so that there was less vagary in it and a less of the not so subtle shifting of costs to the electric utility. I think the first budget I did, I probably shifted a couple $100,000 back the other direction for that reason, and have really tried to keep it as much as possible as objective as I possibly can. So
I recommend that we keep the same overhead version that we've got now.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is where I jumped ahead. Are we ready to go on to 11 now, which is a fait accompli? But
already done. Information item number 11. We paid this off back in April.
Yep, we agreed to that.
Yes.
To refinance that or to pay off that one defease the loan.
Yeah, pay it off. Yeah.
Now, just as a matter of for next year's budget, that $1.1 million in debt service is going to be reduced, and therefore that's going to flow to the rates.
It will be reduced. Whether it flows directly to the rates has a lot to do with the rest of the budget, purchase power costs, and all the other puts and takes.
But for this specific
it's
item, which is what we were trying to examine, is that's done. So, I mean, I said there's no silver bullet here, but perhaps, $1 million here or $1 million there.
Pretty soon you have a lot of money, right, Mr. Chairman?
Well, not a lot, but at least we're on our way.
You do.
Cindy, if I may go back just one moment. On the cost allocation of the previous item, the legal fees for the power is all being charged direct to the power, correct?
The outside attorneys, the transactional attorneys, directly to the electric utility.
Okay. I was sure they were. Thank you.
Yeah, they get a small allocated portion of the city attorney's office, but not much.
I understand that.
Yeah, those are direct, absolutely. Item 12 goes with item 11. This is one where we talked about refinancing, and we did refinance the Series 2008. What Mr. Dunlap advised us was that because the other one, the 2003, can't be called without penalty until December 2018, that this would result, if we refinanced it, particularly if we spread it out farther, in a present value loss of between $2 and $4 million, and an actual cash flow loss of about $8 million through 2027. And so at that meeting, both you and the Utility Commission voted unanimously not to recommend refinancing that other Series 2003A bond before the call date. So I don't know if you want to rethink that one or if you're just happy with your old decision.
So again, that's an information item.
It is, unless for some reason you want to rethink your recommendation. But I think we vetted that one pretty thoroughly at that joint meeting, and everyone was happy with this. So.
Yep. So having passed through the, may we go on to item 13?
Do we need
is.
to
Which
have
we-
any action on that, Mr. Chairman, or
Sure.
are we good to go, or do we need to vote on this one?
Maybe what you should do is vote to uphold your previous recommendation from March the 19th, if you could do that.
Okay, I'll make that recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, thank you for keeping us on track. I mean,
I'm not so sure about that, Mr. Chairman.
13, we have the living presence that, in fact, executes this.
That's an information item.
Mr. Richard?
Behind me, raise your hand. Now, the next few are ones where I'm going to let our city manager address the optimization study, which, again, we have had council direction to proceed with. And then we have Tom Richards and Ted Fletcher here to talk about the bigger ones, the renegotiating the contracts. And I think Jim's going to start with that one, and then also the idea of decommissioning the power plant, et cetera. So.
In our rate study that has been proposed that you all covered a little earlier, we also wanted to put into that package the optimization study. We are using as the example of what GIS or GAI did for us in the water and sewer, and how we were able to implement that optimization there and save considerable amount of money in that utility of water and sewer. We think that the same, if someone with the electric experience come in and look at our system as it is, we have some ideas of where we think we can save some money. One of those is in the power plant. We have very little use of the power plant, but it is under contract, and those type of discussions are starting to take place. But we would really like to have that third party come in and take a look at that. And I think at the same time that we're doing the rate study would be the appropriate time that if they could do the optimization, if we implement that, what would be the impact as the rates going forward. So I guess what we're just asking for you all to endorse the optimization portion of that study. Obviously, we'll have a cost to that, but I think it will reap benefits as we move forward, and it will allow us to ask some real pertinent questions to those that are specialized in that business.
Mr. Chairman, I brought this up, I believe, in one of our meetings, and so therefore I'd like to make the recommendation that we add that optimization study as a portion of this.
Is there any estimate what it would cost?
No, sir, there isn't. We're doing the RFP now, and we're getting a lot of that information from other sources, and so we're trying to put that package together.
Further discussion?
Was there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I think you need a second.
Second?
No. The motion is to go forward with the staff's recommendation as is in progress. All in favor?
Aye.
Tom and Ted can give you some of the technical details, but the next one is the pursuing of renegotiating the FMPA LUC contracts. That comes in a couple stages. One is the OUC contract that incorporates the use of the power generation requirements on the city of Vero Beach under that contract, and then obviously FMPA as we tie into the base amount of power that we take or pay contract in their particular case. We have written letters to OUC and to FP&L because we're now under two contracts that we would have to sort of work through. The OUC obviously is the one that controls what we can do with our generation, and also what we would need in order to give capacity backup. In other words, if we take our capacity that is generated or has the potential of being generated from our power plant, we have to have transmission and capabilities of having other capacity that is available to us in order to supplement and make up for that difference. The part of that we have to go back to FP&L. One is that we're changing the contract. OUC obviously wants to make sure that FP&L has no problem with us, since we are under contract with FP&L at this particular time, to sell our system as is. And we have in that contract said that we would keep it to industry standards and maintain all assets that we have. So FP&L will have to give us the authority, for example, to dispose of assets such as the power plant if we have the ability to increase the transmission. We don't think that's going to be an issue because that's reducing their exposure and cost to the city. If we take the utility offline, then they don't have to worry about environmental issues. But I have informed FP&L that as long as that contract's there, I would not make a recommendation to the City Council we actually take the plant down, because they're going to pay us 3 years of rent at $1.5 million a year, whether they use it or not. So we do have an asset that would pay for itself. Plus, they are obligated to take the plant actually down under the contract. But there again, we would be taking the units offline, and we just want to make sure that FP&L agrees to that. Also, we would have to have FP&L would be the body that we request to do the transmission study. That transmission study will determine what are the needs in order to facilitate, if we buy capacity off the open market or wherever we get that capacity, that we would have the ability to transmit it up to our customer base. And so they would have to perform that because we would be using their system. And we do know that there is a weakness at the Emerson substation that will have to be addressed. Part of that transmission study would take into consideration what is necessary at that substation, possibly a larger transformer. And then we also have been in touch with FMPA talking about some transmission studies that have been done that relate to our system, that just to make sure we identify all of our substations and any needs that we may have in those particular areas. So the initial letters have gone out. We have gotten positive responses back from both FP&L and OUC. FP&L said they would work with us in any form or fashion that they can within reason to help us accommodate and try to figure out how to lower our cost. And OUC, on several occasions, as a matter of fact, as recently as last night, Jan Asperu has told me that he's ready to sit down and start discussing and negotiating, or addressing, not negotiating, addressing some of the issues in our contracts with them that will try to make it a win-win for both parties. And I think there are areas that we can do that and sort of accommodate those discussions. So the process has started. It's going to take some time, and the transmission study alone will take several months, probably. Tom, do you think? Yeah. So and so we will have to work through those. But we're working within the frameworks of the two contracts that we stand with, and hopefully we'll be proceeding in that. If we bring the consultant online, I think we will even get some advice from them as we're progressing as well, is what we anticipate. Be happy to answer any questions that you have. And
any discussion? In this case, this is obviously a longer-term perspective. I would make a motion to continue proceeding, entering into negotiations, and with all of the interested parties.
I'd support that.
All in favor? Oh, second.
Second, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman and
Richards.
Commission, I have the pleasure of presenting this last item on your this particular agenda item for you. I tried. I don't want to sit here and read it to you, so I'll just to kind of outline what I did and then respond maybe to your concerns and questions. I tried to kind of reinterpret the question as I understood it with that first paragraph. Basically, where it starts out by taking steps to, and I just want everyone to recognize this is a complicated process. It's not just we can't make a decision today to close the plant and close it tomorrow. There's a lot of there are many obligations that we have under our current contracts, and a couple of them that I mentioned there are the FPL contract, the asset sale contract with FPL does require us to keep the plant in operating condition, and the contract that we have with OUC that runs another 15 years also requires us to keep the plant in operating condition and depends specifically on the combined cycle for part of our capacity. So those will need to be discussed with both of those parties in order to lay some groundwork for us to be able to move ahead. The process, at least conceptually, would be to, at some point when we're ready to do that, is to develop an RFP for power. If we retire the plant, we need about 60 megawatts to cover our peak load. We don't have enough capacity under firm purchase power agreements to cover our peak loads. So we'll need to purchase that from another party. That other party could be FPL, or it could be any other utility that wanted to bid on it. And then it has to be delivered to us across FPL's transmission system because that's the only utility that can do it for us. There is no other transmission system that's connected to Vero Beach. So the next part of that step would be then to have that contract in hand, a kind of a contingency contract that's been authorized by the council, but subject to the ability to achieve the transmission capacity that we need. We take that back to FPL. We ask them to do a system impact study, which is kind of a phase one study, and they look at it and say, they may say it doesn't have any impact, in which case, go ahead, it's pretty short. They might say, yeah, we need to do a more in-depth study. That could take anywhere from months to a year or two. That study could show that FPL and or Vero need to improve some items on their transmission system, which then would take more time to actually physically design, maybe get right away, purchase the process, get those things in place. Then the power purchase contract could be put into place. Then the power plant could be retired. My thought would be, or my suggestion would be that if you retire the power plant is to leave it there, just put it in a kind of a cold operating safe condition and wait and see what happens next. We still have this sales agreement with FPL that needs to run its course and either be executed or fall by the wayside, but that way you leave yourself open with the most options. So having said that, I think I'd rather respond to your questions about any part of that.
So if things go smoothly, what have we got, 2 years or something like that?
It could possibly happen in 6 months, but I think a year or two would be much more realistic.
Mm-hmm. And then you could start the shutdown.
Yeah, really, you could retire the plant and begin receiving power from remote sources, and then reduce our cost and operating cost.
And that's assuming kind of there's not a lot of construction of transmission facilities or something along those lines.
That's correct. That assumes that either the new construction is either minimal or non-existent.
Yeah.
And we just don't really know that yet until we finally go to that step with FPL and ask them officially in writing to do that.
Who are the possible providers that might bid on this?
Well, I would suggest that one possibility is you could negotiate a purchase contract with somebody that you like and know, and the two obvious candidates would be FPL.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry. One option, I suppose, would be to negotiate a contract with somebody that you thought was a good provider, and that would possibly be FPL or OUC. Or you could do a public request for proposals and let anyone who wanted to provide that proposal for you to analyze and determine which one you thought was the best.
In a public proposal, though, aren't they sort of restricted on who has certain service areas?
No, not on this kind of a basis. No, you could have somebody from Georgia or Alabama propose to sell you power. The question is getting it here. The realistically speaking, you're talking about Florida utilities. Would be the only possible bidders.
Okay, would Duke Power be one of them, possibly?
I would certainly invite them to bid.
Mr. Chairman, I won't excuse myself from a vote on that. I have a son that works for them, so I would excuse myself just on the general principles.
Thank you. We don't need any conflict of interest. I do have a couple of questions. Whatever is going to be done is synchronous with FPL should the deal go through. It will be consistent with assuming the deal closes, whatever you're doing in terms of transition and transitioning the plant will be acceptable to FPL, as you said, if and when the sale goes through.
Yes, and that particular contingency does need to be discussed and agreed to by FPL. In other words, it's not quite in line with the current sales agreement, but we're hoping that we can get there.
The second part is we have a transfer station, do we not, adjacent to the plant?
Yes, if you're talking about the electric substation.
Yes, I am.
Yes, on the
and we
west
have
side.
a vacant piece of land of the old post office. Now, there may be a different configuration depending upon how the sale goes in terms of whether that's going to be moved or not, it seems to me.
My thought would be is to leave everything where it is today, including that substation, and wait and see what happens with the FPL sales agreement. Under the sales agreement, they're obligated to essentially build you a new substation and then retire that one. As part of that agreement. If the sales agreement doesn't go through, the substation functions perfectly, and you can decide if, when, and where you want to spend the money to move it.
Well, if it's working perfectly now and is working perfectly if the plant goes down, why do we have to move it if we sell? That is a policy issue that's hypothetical, not a rhetorical. Any other? I really appreciate the input. We understand things are under negotiation. We understand it is as complex as ever, but there is movement and there is discussions, and we will wait and see what the how they transpire as you have, and the staff has always kept us informed at our meetings in terms of reporting out. And it's been a like a mountain railroad. It's up and down and around trestles and over gorges.
What would we be approving here or suggesting today? That you can pursue getting the costs together, because there are no numbers here, as to what, keeping as is costs versus making these.
You're asking for approval conceptually of continuing to
just to
pursue this, correct?
Do the studies and get the numbers.
That is correct. I guess what I'm looking for is that you agree that we need to pursue and proceed in this direction of looking at options and alternatives. Before a decision's made one way or the other, you all, as well as the City Council, will have all the numbers as to what is the cost benefit of doing or taking the action. As the Chairman said earlier, it's like relocating the substation. That's, again, a policy decision as to which piece of ground do you want a substation sitting on.
There are too many unknowns as the way this thing is written up now. So what is, if I understand you correctly, like on the bottom of page 16 on this, the costs of transmission modifications for modified NITS are unknown. You want to get those known, right?
That is correct.
And you want to, hopefully you want to make sure that it's going to be obvious that the proposed plan will result in significant savings, because right now it says just the opposite. It's not obvious. So you just want to clear up some of these unknowns. So
that
you're
is
asking
correct.
for approval to go forward with that.
To keep proceeding, yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, do we kind of have an idea of what it would be like shutting down the plant? I mean, in terms of saving or not saving or issues or whatever?
That is a very good question. You're going to have initial upfront cost. An estimate of the transmission or the transformer that would be located at the Emerson substation, somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million. And that would be just one of the costs. There may be transmission issues, but there may be ways of negotiating and reducing some of those costs. For example, if FP&L would like to have those transmissions, some transmission upgrades, because they still need to go through us, they have customers to the north of us. If we can work out some type of deal where they invest in the transmission that not only helps the city of Vero Beach, but also helps them and their customer. So you try to get to that number. But let's say that the number's $8 million. What we would try to do is do the cost benefit of $8 million versus the operation of the plant over that period. What is our payback time? And so we would have to do the analysis of all those numbers once we capture what that is, because you're going to have your transmission issues that you have to deal with and then you're also going to have the price of capacity. Now, from all indications, Lake Worth got a very good price on capacity when they did an RFP, because there's a very high supply and a lower demand. Let's say in 3 years, there's a big boom in the state of Florida and the supply doesn't change, but the demand does, then the pricing may become another issue, and reliance on our plant may be another option that we'd have to look at. But all those have to come together, and it is, as Tom's indicated, it's just going to take time to put those bundles together and say, this is what we can do. Here are our options. And it's...
But the physical plant itself and shutting that down, isn't that quite a savings to us?
It's about a $4 million a year expense. But if you have to buy a $5 million transformer and pay for capacity charges, that payback period may be, 5 years or 6 years.
Right.
Just using and that'll be a decision that have to be made. Now, and that's just putting it in cold storage. To actually remove the plant adds could be up to $6 million. And so those are the type of numbers we'll put together. And those will be the decisions or policy decisions that the council will make as to, do we just leave the plant in cold storage? And as Tom has indicated, we have a substation sitting there that, in fact, not only the substation's there, but all of our battery backup packs are in the thing. I mean, it's quite a piece of equipment that's floating there. And it may be that keeping it in place in cold storage would be the best cost-effective way. But at the same time, if people want to open it up for rowing and use sailing and that kind of stuff, then the values change a little bit.
There's also personnel exit costs in terms of, to the degree you don't need the staffs, then that is a spike in the cost with the close down. So there's all these moving parts, as we appreciate.
That is correct. And we just have to put those bundles together and determine which direction we want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, any other questions? Can we make a resolution to go forward? We've done that already.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we authorize the continuation of the study to optimize power supply options in the short term.
Second?
Second?
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't disagree, Mr. Chairman, but as I explained, I won't vote on this one.
Well, you can
Thank you
vote
very
on
much,
that.
Tom.
You can vote on that item, I believe, because that has nothing to do. That's not our financial for you.
Well, my only concern is because they may go out for public, and then I just do not vote. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for your endurance and for your questions, commissioners, because not only for ourselves, but I think it's helpful for the public to see that whether we agree or not on all of them, at least we're trying to look at through the prism and see what are the options we have and explain where our positions. So thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman and Commission, just so you know, our plan is to take this analysis, add to it your motions and votes, your recommendations, provide it to the Utility Commission, and have them review it as well and add their motion and vote and recommendation on each item. And then once those two pieces are there, to take the entire thing forward to the City Council so that they can decide which things they'd like to pursue based on the recommendations. So I believe the Utility Commission's meeting July the 22nd, which is the time when they would look at this, something in that neighborhood. And then once they look at it, we'll add their recommendations and then forward the entire package to the council. So.
Well, I want to thank Jim, you, Cindy, and the entire staff, Tom, Ted, who put this SWOT analysis together and gave us a roadmap that at least we could see what the mileage signs are. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
This next item is hopefully a very short one. We went, as you know, we're currently negotiating with our union contract to freeze our defined benefit plan and replace it with a defined contribution plan effective October the 1st. And towards that end, we actually have some things to accomplish first. We put an RFP out on the street for defined contribution plan providers. Mr. Glenn Brevant, who unfortunately is not here with us today, was a member of that RFP selection committee. And as a result of that evaluation, we are, the evaluation committee would like to recommend to council that ICMA RC be selected as the number one ranked firm and that we pursue a contract with them for the defined contribution plan. The committee, the evaluation committee, asked that we bring this to the Finance Commission first to get their endorsement of that before we take it to council. The reason it's in front of you now is it's running parallel with the negotiations, but we have to keep moving so that should our negotiations be successful, we'll actually have the ability to put a defined contribution provider on contract in the first quarter of next fiscal year. So we need to solidify this selection, get permission to negotiate, get a contract in place at the same time that we're still negotiating this taking place.
I'm sorry, and you're asking
for you to review this, and if you feel comfortable with it, endorse our recommendation of ICMA as the number one ranked firm before we present that to City Council. And as I said, I wish that Mr. Brevant was here. I was on the evaluation committee as well, so if you have questions about ICMA and why we chose them, I'm happy to answer them. I was hoping that Glenn could be here too and add to that, but if you...
You don't want us to do it now.
If you don't mind.
Well, I don't have any information on it.
The information that's attached is the deliberations of the evaluation committee, the scoring, and the ranking.
Item 7B.
What?
It's a separate attachment from what you have.
It's a what?
It's a separate attachment.
It says review RFP evaluation results. It might be, if you printed the whole thing as one package, it might be at the very back of your SWOT package.
Yeah, it was a separate item.
I don't think I have it.
Do you have just, how many sheets are there? Is that just one copy?
Yeah, that's one copy. It was sent as a backup. It was sent to you twice, actually.
I'm holding an extra one down here if someone needs one to look at.
All we're really doing is confirming their vote. Yeah.
Exactly, unless you know something and again, I was hoping that Glenn would be here if you're interested in why we liked ICMA best, and I can certainly fill you in on some of that. And if you had any other questions about why we chose them or why we didn't choose some of the other firms, happy to try to answer those.
It's the lowest score. Means you're the highest. It's one of those.
Correct.
Unusual.
One thing you'll notice from looking at this is they actually they fared well in the first round, but they did improve their score and were essentially unanimous across the board post-interview. We actually conducted physical interviews and conversations, presentations with the three highest-ranked firms, and ICMA came out clearly on top for all of us after that. They had a really excellent combination of low fees, which matter, combined with really a good investment mix for both sophisticated investors and unsophisticated ones. I think the thing that was biggest for us is that they had a huge amount of education and transition support for city employees, because going from a defined benefit plan where you have nothing to do with the investments to going to a defined contribution plan where it's completely on you to choose the things that are going to enable your retirement is a huge transition and a big shock. And ICMA, we do have some experience with them. They are currently a city provider for our 457 plan, and their transition plan and their support to staff in making that transition was excellent. And on top of it, they have offered to lower some fees related to the 457 program as well, if bundled with this. There are about 50 plus people that in the city that already have a 457 with ICMA that would receive now consolidated statements with both their defined contribution and their 457 on it, would have access to the same financial advisors and ICMA staff that they're comfortable with already. And so all in all, the other firms were great, and we did have some great proposals, but we felt really strongly that ICMA was the best. So.
It wasn't a rate decision, though, that it was a service, more of a service.
Combination.
Yeah.
They weren't they were tied for the lowest in fees, but when you threw in the fact that they were doing away with some 457 fees, it brought them down there. Yeah. But they also had the best investment mix, we felt, and the best education. Great. So it was kind of it was truly a qualifications-based thing, not a pure price.
Commissioner Brovant sits on the.
He did sit on that evaluation committee.
And I had expected, I did not realize that
he was not
going to be here today. So this is why there's a little bit of a hiccup. But yeah,
exactly.
I'm comfortable with the direction you're going. A comment from the commissioners?
I'm comfortable recommending we go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I would move that we accept the recommendation and allow them to move forward with their request. I guess you want to recommend ICMA-RC as your choice. Okay. I would move for that.
Second? All in favor?
Yeah, second.
Okay. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh.
That is all I have.
You have anything else, Cindy?
That is all that I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Jim? Members' matters?
I have one, Mr. Chairman. I'm on the Audit Selection Committee, and Cindy, I just wanted you to know that I will be out of pocket July 8th through the 17th, and then August 27th through the end of September. I'll be happy to join you on Skype if you have something scheduled for that time. However, we could work it out. If something comes up that we're going to have a meeting, I'll be happy to make arrangements to dial in.
I believe that based on some other people being gone, that schedule's perfect. The proposals aren't going to be back until like the 17th or the 18th of July. And then our meetings to evaluate them and our presentations happen, I believe, between then and August the 22nd. And then after that, it's all council decision-making and negotiation.
Great.
So I think that if you're gone the 8th through the 17th of July, if I've got this right, and the 22nd through September, August 22nd through September, that seems to fit perfectly with the schedule. So I'll go make sure, but I think that's great.
So you don't anticipate having a Finance Commission meeting before July 17th? It'll be sometime after.
We may, but the Audit Committee is a separate thing entirely.
Oh, okay.
That's a separate committee.
One of the comments was that I talked about setting a new meeting, the next meeting for the Finance Commission. One of it is going to be dependent on, but we're hurtling into the budget season. But one of our requirements is to do a quarterly review of the variance analysis of the progress of our budgets. Cindy, can you?
Your next quarterly will be available the third or fourth week of July. It's for April, May, June. Okay. So if you want to, and then our council budget workshops are July the 7th through the 11th or 12th. So, again, if it's the way it has been the last few years, they may at that workshop have something they want us to bring to you to discuss with you before they adopt. So given both those things, I'd say you want to shoot for maybe that last week in July, and then you should have the quarterlies by the third week in July.
That's fine with.
Did we set a date? We set a few, because we agreed that we would meet the first week of the following the end of the month following we had a plan. We did. We had a regular schedule, but forget about it because it's summer. Very last week of July or the first week of August would be my suggestion.
Yeah, because that's what we did for the fourth meeting. We had it a month after the close of the quarter, plus a week. Mm-hmm. And so a month after the close of the quarter plus a week is
last week of July, first week of August.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sherry, you follow up on that, please, yes. And then we can get it out and have it a public announcement and get it on the calendar so we're not criticized for making things on short order. With that, Mr. Mayor, do you have any comments? Oh, with that, my gosh, it's only 4:35.
Is it really?
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation that we be excused.
All
Support.
Right. I will adjourn.
Thank you.
All in favor? Thank you very much, everyone.